This is the Read Aloud of Spirit Animals, Section 9. It begins on page 36. Make sure you have a pencil out and that you are ready to annotate the text as we read. They struck out just before dawn. During the night, Hinta had used the cover of darkness to sneak up on the camp's palisade and weaken the stakes in a large section. Uraza crept forward, slinking through the grass alongside the Greencloak humans. Though many times their size, the great leopard was a more than able stalker. When she did not wish to be noticed, eyes simply moved past her. They reached the palisade, and she waited while Tembo and Gentak quietly dislodged the wooden slats. How had she ended up here, relying on humans to do things for her? She developed a certain fondness for her little warrior, but now a whole crowd of the smelling things surrounded her. Tembo motioned for silence. They huddled down as a pair of guards passed by on the wall above them. The conversation drifted down in the early morning air. "She's pushing us hard," one of the conquerors was saying. "The troops are exhausted." "But she got the talisman," the other answered. "The last few tribes in the south are surrendering, and northern Nyla won't be far behind. She'll probably go after the lion. Cabarrot's next." Uraza could almost hear the evil grin as the first man spoke. "I can't wait to burn some of those villages once they surrender. The look on their faces is just priceless." "And then we can finally leave this ugly mudhole behind," the other answered. And their footsteps began to recede. Uraza started to growl, but Tembo put his hands on her flanks to quiet her. She glared at him, but grew still. Once the hole was cleared, they each wriggled through and crept from the building to building on the other side of the stockade. It was still and calm inside, almost unnaturally peaceful. The rest of Tembo's warriors spread out and disappeared into the early morning grayness as Tembo, Gentak, and Uraza made their way to the central building. Gentak peered around the edge of one of the nearby makeshift wooden shelters. "Guards, little brother. Many guards," he said to Tembo. "We'll have to go in from behind." They skulked through the outlying huts, making their way to the rear of the main building. It was only a small two-story thing, with rough stockade walls and a shingled roof. Gentak squatted, and Tembo stood on his shoulders, bracing himself against the wall. With a low grunt, Gentak pushed up, and Tembo grasped the top of the wall. He pulled himself up to be even with the roof and scrambled onto the shingles. Once Tembo was safely in, Gentak disappeared into the morning fog. Uraza backed up, took a few steps, and leaped to the top of the building. She soared through the air, a sleek arrow of predatory instinct. Another beast of her size might have made a crash, but she landed as delicately as a sparrow alighting on a branch. There was a trapdoor in the roof, which Tembo easily slipped through, but Uraza had to wriggle and push her way in. The room was bare, not merely plainly decorated, but completely empty. There were even marks on the floorboards where furniture had stood, but now it was all gone. Tembo crept to the stairs, but looked back, shaking his head. "Nothing here," he whispered. "It's been stripped clean." Uraza glanced around the empty room, her body tensing. Semillia knew we were coming. This is a trap. As she said it, a bell pealed outside. Tembo ran to the trapdoor and poked his head through it. "They're pouring out of the buildings," he yelled down, fully armed and armored. Uraza flexed her muscles and bared her fangs. "You don't trap a great beast twice. I will destroy them all." Tembo laughed. "I like the enthusiasm, but maybe we could try something with a higher chance for my survival." Uraza glared at him. "Semillia has the talisman around her neck. I have a plan. I just hope they haven't caught the rest of our people yet." Tembo rubbed his arm absently. "As soon as I have the talisman, jump down and show them your claws." Uraza said nothing. If he failed, she could still try a more direct approach. Semillia's voice rang through the building. "Come on, Kitty. I don't suppose you'd make this easy. Just surrender and this will all be over. I won't even kill your little goat thief friend." A smile lit up Tembo's face. No mention of the others. This should work. "Very well, little warrior, I'll give you a chance. But if this fails, you're on your own." Tembo shrugged, gripped his spear, and headed for the door, while the leopard returned to the roof to peer down at the enemy. Tembo was right. They had been prepared for this. A horde of conquerors was surrounding the buildings, their armor giving off a dull gleam in the gray light. "Hold on, I'm coming out!" Tembo's shout came from below. A moment later, he was facing off with Semillia in front of the building. He looked tiny, standing there with nothing but his spear and Greencloak, faced with a wall of swords, shields, and spears. Semillia stepped forward, her smile showing off her unnaturally sharpened teeth. Her lizard curled around her neck, mimicking her reptilian smile. "Finally ready to surrender, goat thief? I think you'll find my dungeon quite comfortable." Tembo shrugged casually. "Maybe. Do you have coconuts for Omika there? She likes a cup of coconut juice in the morning, and the rest of the fruit for lunch." Semillia's expression darkened. "Drop your spear and surrender, boy, or I'll take it from your lifeless body." The leopard's sharp violet eyes could see her own talisman dangling on a strip of leather around Semelia's neck, the amber leopard practically glowing in the pre-dawn light. The idea that this awful human shared in Uraza's power by wearing the talisman sent a fresh wave of fury through her. Semelia gripped her sword, which would swing with vicious speed, her movements aided by the hunter's instincts that Uraza's talisman conveyed. Tembo stuck 2 fingers to his lips and let out a whistle that pierced the morning air. Then 2 things happened at once. First, the stockade shook with the sound of explosions. In 4 places around the camp, fires suddenly sprouted into the air. Conquerors spun around in confusion, pointing at plumes of smoke at the edges of the stockade. At the same time, Tembo stuck out his arm. A streak of energy came off his wrist, and in a burst of light, Omika appeared, right on Semelia's shoulder. It happened in a blink, too fast even for Semelia's talisman-hastened speed. Before the woman could think to react, Omika grabbed the talisman and ripped it from her neck. Uraza was stunned. The ability to control exactly where a spirit animal appeared was not something that she had ever heard of. The two must have spent a long time practicing to learn this trick. Omika jumped towards Tembo just as Semelia swung at the monkey with her jagged sword. The woman's arm was fast, but no longer quickened by the power of the talisman. Omika lengthened and burst into light as she moved, and by the time the blade reached the monkey, she was nothing but a streak of energy. Tembo caught the talisman in his left hand, while Omika appeared as a tattoo in the dormant state on his right wrist. Tembo raised the talisman in his hand, and Uraza leaped down. The leopard roared with joy, finally able to strike at the enemy after so many days of pursuit. They had been distracted by the explosions, their neat lines shattered. She easily charged through them as discipline evaporated. Conquerors went flying, struck by a whirlwind of claws and fangs. For a long minute she let the rage consume her as she pressed her revenge on the mass of enemy soldiers. Uraza purred gleefully as she saw Semelia retreating, guarded by shield-bearing conqueror soldiers. It was only when the enemy fell back to reform that Uraza realized she had lost track of Tembo. She followed his scent through the smoke and found him lying on the far side of the camp, an arrow protruding from his right leg. He had a firm grip on the talisman, but wounded as he was, both were easy targets for the enemy. The scene was now cast in an orange glow as towering flames lit up the stockade. Buildings in the interior were starting to catch as well, straw roofs going up in smoke first. Some conquerors were running, but Semelia had pulled together a large contingent and was forming a shield wall with them. In the firelight, her sharpened teeth gleamed as she ordered her soldiers to prepare themselves. She caught Uraza's eye, and in her gaze was something that surprised the great leopard. Triumph! That was when she noticed the lizard. It moved like water, slithering over and past the injured Tembo, carrying away the amber leopard talisman as easily as a river abducts a leaf. Uraza yowled, a sound that shook the whole camp, and lunged for the tatara. But it was too fast, was already halfway up Semelia's leg by the time Uraza had reached Tembo. There are too many, Tembo said, gasping for breath, and I can barely move. Get your talisman back and run. You can still beat her. The enemy closed in, a curtain of steel. Behind the line, Semelia cackled in victory. Uraza weighed the odds. Could she defeat them? Her sinews tensed, ready to charge in. One good blow could scatter them and break the wall. She had reserves of strength untapped, and the body of a great beast was incredibly a resilient thing. Uraza glanced at the brave little goat thief, trying to push himself up with one hand, his spear at the ready in the other. She might win her talisman back, but he was already hurt, and would almost certainly not survive. No, little warrior, she said. You're going to live to continue this fight. She lowered onto her haunches. Climb on. Tembo didn't wait for her to ask twice, almost jumping onto her back despite his injured leg. Hold tight, Uraza commanded, and if you tell anyone about this, I'll eat you and your monkey both. She could feel Tembo gripping tightly to her fur. As the shield wall charged, Uraza lunged forward. She crashed to the end of their line, then accelerated down one of the streets. The flames had overtaken most of the stockade wall, including the gate. The heat of the dry season had left this fortification as kindling, ready to burn with the slightest provocation. She dodged past falling timbers from one building and a conqueror charging from another. They arrived at the hole that they'd entered through, but it was blocked by fallen logs and smoke. They were both starting to cough as smoke began to choke the air. We need another way out, Tempo croaked. Don't let go, Uraza answered, picking up even more speed as she raced across the ground. Finally, with a burst of strength, she leaped into the air. She could feel Tembo clinging tightly to her back as she fairly cleared the bottom of the flames, leaving the fur on her feet singed. Uraza loped across the savannah, leaving the burning stockade to light up the horizon behind her. This is the end of Section 9.